Hello and welcome back to Aetheral Space, 9.28, The Masks That Wore Themselves. We are back.
Yes, welcome. My name is Darnellio, and you don't need a recap because we just gave a recap on 9.27, and you should be watching these in order, okay?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
He told me everything before we started recording.
That's such a good meme. Alright.
It was an incomprehensible bit.
This is the one bit that's not incomprehensible because I think everyone in our community's seen the fucking Breaking Bad meme for that on TikTok.
We told them everything.
Welcome to the Outer Garden. Please take a moment to appreciate the imaginary environs before proceeding on to the Inner Garden. May God grant you grace. Paradisus awaits. Hallelujah. Confidential material! How? That's like the most vague welcome greeting of all time. How's that confidential?
Perhaps we will find out.
Maybe. Skipper logged in. The garden was so very different from reality, and that was noticeable from the first second there. When he opened his eyes, there was no second of adjustment to the light, no moment for things to come into focus, just the instant awareness of himself and his surroundings. The ambient aches and pains that accompanied aging were gone too. A tremendous lack of attention to detail. I'd love to see Skipper, run into a rock at an angle for, 30 seconds to glitch somewhere else.
I thought you meant, really fast.
No, yeah, just, love to see him perform some speedrun glitches. A tremendous lack of attention to detail. He was in a farball stadium, massive, with automatic billboards and cameras zipping through the sky above. The monotonous sound of a crowd cheering echoed throughout the space, but the stands were empty. It was like he was in a ghost world, where everyone was dead but him. Well, him and a scant few exceptions. He blinked, from habit rather than necessity, and the second his eyes opened again, he was no longer alone. A purple squirrel stood on a velvet stool before him, the legs of the furniture merging into the grass like the roots of a tree. The rodent stared at him, apprehension somehow clear in its black gaze. I forgot his voice. "You should not have returned," Hamashtiel said, his rich voice in utter contrast to his adorable appearance. "And if you did, you should not have put yourself before our mercy like this." "What?" Skipper chuckled, his merriment not quite reaching his eyes. "Are you gonna kill me or something?" The squirrel brought out an acorn. No, a human skull in miniature, and crushed it between two tiny paws. "Now that you have come here," Hamashtiel said sadly, "they can do worse things than kill you. They can show you impossible colors, subject you to an infinite second, relay to you the horror thoughts of the sapphire star. What were you thinking?" Skipper stuffed his hands into his pockets disinterestedly. "You don't seem too pleased with that, pal." "Of course not," Hamashtiel sighed, tossing the tiny skull over his shoulder where it became a flower in the dirt. "I have seen your life, Skipper. You showed it to me last time you were here. I cannot deny I have a certain measure of sympathy for you." Skipper scratched his nose. "You're warming my heart here, little guy. You could get me an audience with the Apex Bishop, then, right?" Everything went black. A second later, sight returned, but Skipper was no longer in the same place. He was floating over a chaotic red ocean, waves broiling and thunderclouds roaring, as the shapes of creatures unknown moved beneath the depths. Rain battered against his face, their chill like cold steel. His legs flailed in empty air. It took him a second to figure out that he wasn't floating. He was being held aloft by the back of his coat. Hamashtiel had changed as well. He was gargantuan, his form stretching from the bottom of the ocean below to the peak of the clouds above. A cross between a tree and a disease, warped humanoid features leaking out of the bark, gripping Skipper between two jagged fingernails. "You do not understand your position, Skipper," the abomination rumbled. "You do not have the advantage here. You have placed yourself beneath the heel of a great boot, with no leverage to extract yourself." Skipper shook his head like a dog, hair flopping this way and that. When he looked up at those massive, bloodshot eyes, though, His face was spread into a victorious grin. "The leverage!" he laughed. "Really? You're sure of that?" The eyes narrowed, pus leaking from beneath the eyelids. "What do you—" Skipper spread his arms wide, as if daring the monster to drop him. "It's simple," he said, his quiet voice somehow overpowering the rain. "You're not Hamashtiel Narada." Everything went black. When Skipper opened his eyes for the third time, he was in a brightly lit room. The decor was extravagant, everything capable of holding a frill near to bursting with them, and warm sunlight poured in from a window that took up one whole wall. There were no doors, though, as far as he could see, and besides the sunlight, nothing else was visible outside of that window. He was sitting down in a chair too small for him, at a table too small for him. Across from him, much more suited to the size of the furniture, a young girl with curly blonde hair poured tea into cups shaped like grasping hands. You speak nonsense," the girl said in Hamashtiel's voice, carefully stirring the liquid in the hand cups. "The stress of pursuing us has led you to delusion." Skipper went to crack his neck, but in this virtual space the usual motion came with no result. He frowned. "And yet," he said, "after I said that, seems like you started treating me with kid gloves, yeah? Literally." He went to take one of the hand cups up to his lips, but when he looked down into the open wrist, he saw that it was filled with mud and squirming inhuman embryos. He carefully put it back down. Amastiel put a biscuit into his mouth, chewing on it joylessly as he inspected Skipper. "Your insanity has led you to recklessness," he said calmly. Too calmly, forced. "There's no telling what you would do if we caused you undue stress." Skipper smirked. "Appreciate the concern. When can I see the Apex Bishop, then?" The face of the little girl twisted into a scowl. "You cannot see the Apex Bishop. We have made this clear to you." He'd rattled them. That was plain to see. To understand one of the Paradisus on their own turf, you couldn't fall into the trap of looking at the being before you. That was just an avatar the Paradisus had decided to show you, to illustrate their own existence. It would display whatever emotion they wanted it to without fail. No. To understand a Paradisus, you looked at the world around you. You looked at the bizarrely shaped cups, at the filth inside them, at the color of the sun that seemed to change whenever you weren't looking. You looked at all the little mistakes a little god could make. The whole world around him was Hamashtiel Nirata, and the whole world around him was shaken. Well, far be it from him to resist turning the screws. "Damien Halvalde," Skipper said, looking Hamashtiel's avatar right in the eyes. "I had him killed." The little girl herself gave no response. However, the sunshine stopped, beams of light frozen in space. Skipper took the cup before him and flipped it upside down. No liquid poured free. Everything went black. He was in the darkness of an interrogation room, a bag over his head, giving him only the dimmest awareness of his surroundings. His arms and legs were bound to the chair beneath him. He could hear the persistent sound of a drill, perilously close to his ear. And he was being eaten. Things, barely visible, were feasting on every inch of exposed skin with teeth both agonizingly sharp and laboriously flat. No matter how much they ate, however, Skipper always had flesh to spare. "Why did you do this thing?" Hamashtiel asked. He was a maggot, slowly writhing his way through the cartilage of Skipper's wrist, the barest impressions of a human face on the end of his fat little body. "You murder one of your associates, and gloat about it to our faces. How could this ever profit you?" "Easy," Skipper grinned beneath the sack. "And let me know what you guys really are." The pain was excruciating, but Skipper crushed it down to the deepest parts of him. He knew that it was artificial, a trick of the mind, but that only helped some. The rest was bravado. Hamashtiel said nothing. "What?" Skipper grunted, trying to adjust his sitting position to no avail. "You really thought a paranoiac like Al Valde was going to upload himself without doing his own checks first? You disappoint me, man. You seemed smarter like that." When he finally spoke again, Hamashiel's voice was full of menace.
And what is it you think you've learned, then?
I already told you. You ain't Hamashiel Narada. The Apex Bishop ain't Asmodeus Clove. I already suspected, but I needed proof. That's how blackmail works, yeah? Skipper pooled and tore his arms free of the chair, wood splintering beneath his strength. He whipped the bag off his head, and the beasts and goblins that had been feasting on his flesh quickly scampered off into the darkness. Hamashiel truly was shaken. The wood had felt little more like little more than paper. Skipper reached down and yanked the worm out of his wounded leg, holding it up to his face. A wild grin spread across his lips. His heartbeat felt like a jackhammer in his chest, driving him on, giving him strength. Hamashiel wriggled.
What are you?
You said it yourself, right? Skipper giggled. That you could split your consciousness up to 5 times. That you could be in multiple places at once, yeah? It just didn't seem right to me. I mean, I'm no computer guy, but I get a gut feeling. I assume it's got a gut feeling? You're meant to be human bodies plugged into the system, right? Nah. Just didn't seem right to me that you could do stuff like that. I had to look into it.
Your mistake!
Hamashiel began speaking, but Skipper was done talking to the small fry. He strode forwards, tossed the worm over his shoulder, and plunged his hands into empty space. From there, it took a simple application of strength to wrench it open. Everything went white. The white marble of a heavenly choir, sculpted into an arena, the shape of which was mathematical perfection. The earnest blue sky of an ideal world, clouds only permitted where they added to its grace. And above the burning sun, only it was not a sun. It was a sphere of solid gold, floating majestically above this new arena, incoherent voices babbling and moaning inside. Just what Skipper had been looking for. He calmly walked forward up a staircase of white stone, ignoring the countless gazes that pierced him. On either side of the arena, great stands floated in the sky, and they were fully occupied by the Paradisus flock. Entities of every shape and stripe, regarding Skipper warily. He had their attention. At the top of the staircase, the apex bishop Asmodeus sat. He had taken on the form of a giant toad, formed with stone, somehow grotesque and regal at the same time. As he ascended, Skipper spread his arms theatrically. "Here's my hypothesis," he declared, already feeling victorious. "None of you are the people who've been uploaded to the garden. Not a one." Who's Hal Valde? Was he mentioned before this chapter?
He was the guy that he sent the chorus to kill and steal stuff from.
Oh, and did he do that?
Yeah.
Before Hal Valde's upload was approved, he had to send you guys a whole lot of information on his background. But not just that. You did personality tests, too. Dozens and dozens of them. Was that to see if he was a good fit for the garden? I don't think so. His suspicion had been the start of this road, but the information he'd gotten from Damien Halvalde had led him here. You needed that information to make a program that could accurately impersonate him, Skipper said with authority. Because that's all you guys are, right? Impersonators. Programs designed to do the work of the person uploaded, while their actual consciousness goes... there. As he reached the top of the staircase, he pointed to up to the golden sphere in the sky. The babbling voices did not even notice him, too intent on the simple pleasures they'd won for themselves. Slowly, the apex bishop's heavy eyes blinked. "The inner garden," he said solemnly. That was confirmation enough. Oh, sorry, was that Asmodeus talking?
Oh, yeah.
"The inner garden," he said solemnly. That was confirmation enough. Skipper grinned. "I don't think I need to tell you this, but I've got measures in place to leak this information if I don't check in by a certain time. Don't get any funny ideas about keeping me here, yeah?" The bulging eyes of the toad opened once again, and they were full of defeat. "What," he said slowly, "do you want?" Skipper blinked. "Well, I already told you that. I just want a little help taking down the Supreme. What do you say?" "For this," Asmodeus grunted, Even for this, we cannot do such an ill-advised thing. If our involvement was known... Skipper narrowed his eyes. What do you think will happen when the other branches find out you're not their original comrades in faith? That you're a group of soulless machines ruling over humans while pretending to be them? I don't think they'll take it kindly. Even so, that's... Should I show you? Skipper turned away from the Apex Bishop, holding his hands high in the air. This place was a realm of imagination and flexibility. Skipper had been through a few different iterations of it now, and he felt like he'd gotten something of a handle on it. Enough to do this, at the very least. Skipper had the sky tell his story. Superbian forces firing upon Paradise's ships, unleashing great viruses to scramble their minds, shattering the bodies of those brave enough to fight them. Humorless mobs dragging their allies out of their homes, burning them in their thousands, mutilating those that would have been too merciful for. Destruction, 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 and the cruel silence that followed. And, worst of all, the citizens placed in the care of the Paradisus, butchered in their houses, and the apocalyptic measures that would be taken to protect them. These scenes flared across the sky, terrors given form, the constellations of the sky accentuating their horror. The sounds of screaming overpowered all. Even the air held the taste of pungent blood. And the man Skipper stood below it all, directing the visions with his hands, the midnight maestro of the nightmare orchestra. So, he smiled. What do you say? Check please, says Apex Bishop.
Basically what he says. Check, please.
Fucking hell. That was a good one. Interesting. I will be honest with you, I kind of forgot who Damien was. I don't know if he was mentioned enough before, if it was just a matter of time.
So,
but that part kind of lost me. Mm-hmm.
He went out to kill a guy with his little furry and steal stuff from him. And that was Damien.
On Skipper's orders. Yeah. But like Damien hadn't been mentioned before that order.
No.
So it was just kind of implied that Damien was the one really running things.
Well, no, he was going to be uploaded to the garden. That's why he was on his way. But they intercepted him and killed him.
So what did that accomplish?
Well, they stole the information they had.
Oh, so that's how he figured all this out, by stealing it from Damien. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Now it lines up. Alright, what's your fun fact?
Fun fact. I don't really have. Can you give me a question?
Okay. Tell me how Hamastiel first became a Paradisus worshipper.
The real Hamastiel?
Wait, so who's that? Because that one's the robot Hamastiel, right?
Yeah, so the ones that we've been interacted with, every Paradisus we've interacted with is an AI, basically. Designed to impersonate the person who got to go to the really nice inner garden.
But there are other people in the Outer Garden, right?
Well, yes.
It's just all the important people are in the Inner Garden, and they just
if
experience...
you are a human Paradisus guy and you get uploaded to the garden, you go to the Inner Garden and they make an AI to basically take your place in the real world.
And what's in the Inner Garden? It's just like constant pleasure, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so why is that like bad? Isn't that what everyone wants?
Yeah, well, they don't know about that because they don't know that the people running the government are not actually people, but a bunch of AIs.
Oh, Lamau. I see. You won't find a fulfilling life of just constant, like, simulated pleasure. Must be miserable in there. No purpose. You can say. Well, I suppose the human experience can say.
Pleasure, so I think I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah, but does that offer you any deeper purpose or happiness in the dark hours of the night? Or is it just chasing temporary highs?
It's permanent. I don't know what you're talking about.
Alright, so my question then is, I guess, what was the real Hamastiel like then, I suppose?
Well, personality-wise, it would have been very similar because it stood out to be a very, very, very good impersonation. So, surface level, it would have been the same, but in his deeper thoughts, he would probably have been very different. So Hamastiel Narrata is sort of the real one, because that's how I've referred to them in sort of ambiguous narration before.
Mm-hmm.
And Hamastiel, without a second name, is the AI. So they would seem very similar, but underneath the surface they would be very different, basically.
This was not a productive question, but I'll take it. Alright. Otherwise, though, very interesting chapter. I'm
I would say
looking forward.
Hamashiel, the AI, is probably much nicer than the actual Hamashiel Narata.
Lol. He's got the politeness upgrade.
Yeah.
I will. Oh, here's a fun one. How do you think things would work for Paradisus if God from Havoc Moon was one of the administrators?
I think things would go very well.
You think he'd do a good job?
I think so, yeah.
Hello, Master. All right. Okay. Well, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time. I'm very eager to see how this arc ends, or what's going to happen going forward.
We're in the last
very
third,
curious.
I'll say, yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, as always, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.